Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mark, and I'm here to talk about Magic. And once again, today we're going to take a look at a commander deck that was built by a player that plays at our LGS. Shout out to Joe for sharing this deck with us. And I'm pretty excited about this one. This is a wild deck, to say the least. Uh, the commander is Volo, Itinerant, Scholar, but it's paired with a background. So the name of the deck puts those two things together, and it's Volo, Itinerant, Brawler. So let's take a quick look here. Volo uh, is a blue. It's two colorless and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard, and it says when Volo enters the battlefield, create Volo's Journal, a legendary colorless artifact token with hexproof. And whenever you cast a creature spell, note one of its creature types that hasn't been noted for this artifact. So if we're going to be noting creature types and uh, hopefully having a lot of different ones, because of the second part of the card, it says pay 2, tap it, draw a card for each creature type noted for target permanent you control named Volo's Journal. So we want a whole bunch of different creature types to be able to uh, put a lot of notes in our journal. And so since we're playing red and blue, we're two colors, so we have access to a few more creature types. But maybe there's some interesting ones in here. We'll see as we look. Tavern Brawler. So Volo at the bottom says choose a background. This is a feature of the Commander Legends Baldur's Gate set. So both this and the background are from that set. The Tavern Brawler is a background. It's an enchantment. It says Commander creatures you own have, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. This creature gets +X/+0 till end of turn, where X is that card's mana value, and you may play that card this turn. So it's kind of a potential buff to your commander, and it's also uh, a little bit of a card advantage. Gives you more things that you can do on your turn. So the first thing to do here is to look at the creatures, and we have 29 of them that are not our commander. And we have a pretty good array of creature types as we go through this. We've got Illusion, we've got Cephalid Advisor, we've got Siren Pirate Wizard, we've got Homunculus. Let's see, we've got Equipment Jellyfish, Phyrexian Bird Horror, Human Detective, Squid Horror, Devil Warrior, Mutant Wizard, Devil Citizen, Vampire Knight, Jin Pirate. This is kind of boring. Goblin Warrior, God, Demon, Tiefling Barbarian. Karlach Fury of Avernus is Tiefling Barbarian. Moon Folk Wizard, Elemental. Cyclops Berserker. Oh, here's another dragon. Who would have thought that dragon would be one of the boring ones? Let's call this guy Zindersplit, another homunculus. I mean, you got to put him in there. That's a wild name. Minotaur Wizard. Avatar. So we have all these different creature types that are going to let us put uh, notes into our journal. So then the Tavern Brawler bit, where it could potentially buff up uh, your commander, at least the power of the commander. So the advantage of doing that, of course, is then it means that you might actually be able to kill someone with commander damage if you can get the commander through. And so we've got some cards in this deck that are giving our commander a chance to attack through without being able to be blocked. So Distortion Strike says target creature gets +1/+0 and can't in this turn until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. And it has Rebound, which means that you get to cast it again for free at the beginning of the upkeep of your next turn. We've got Teleportal, which says target creature you control gets +1/+0 and can't, and until end of turn is unblockable. And it also has Overload, which essentially would make all of your creatures get +1/+0 and unblockable till end of turn. Here, this right here, this is a card you don't ever see anybody play ever, but that's like a pretty good ability. Classic Teamer Battle Rage. Target creature gains double strike till end of turn, but if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, it also gains trample. That's pretty good. Blackblade Reforged, what a great equipment if you want to make your commander really big and have the chance of killing somebody with commander damage. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. Yeah, sign me up. Here you go. Wand of Wonder. You know what? We're off the theme now and we're talking about random cards because this one is pretty random. It says pay for and tap it, roll a d20. Each opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card, then shuffles the rest into their library. You may cast up to X instant and or sorcery spells from among cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. Well, how do we decide what X is? We decide that based on how good of a roll we got on the d20. So 1 through 9, we get to do 1 of those spells. 10 through 19, we get to do 2. And if we hit the nat 20, we get to do 3. Classic D&D bit here from the Baldur's Gate set. You love to see it. There is not a particularly definitive theme with these cards that we've got here, other than that they're different creature types. There's just kind of a lot of stuff that's really vaguely relevant. You know, Thrumming Bird. When it deals combat damage to a player, proliferate. Well, that's going to let you put more counters on Volo's journal. Yeah. Well, maybe you don't get to put counters on it. Crazy. Well, Thrumming Bird maybe does something else. I just learned something in real time right there. Kind of fun. You know, you do have some of the usual suspects in this deck for cards that you pretty commonly see. You know, Brainstorm, Mystical Tutor, Ponder, Preordain, Vandal Blast. These are all, you know, Counterspell, Negate, Reality Shift. These are all cards that are pretty common to see. You know, and then we got the big Delve cards with Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise. Those are they get cheaper by exiling cards out of your graveyard. So those are nice spells where you can kind of have an alternate cost, but the cost that's printed on the card is really high. So then Tavern Brawler, if it sees those cards, buffs Volo pretty big. So another thing to think about with this deck is there's just a bunch of combos hiding out in this deck. And so one thing is after you play a lot of Commander, you start noticing cards that are combo centric. So here's an example of one right here. Curiosity. It's a 1 mana enchantment aura. You put it on a creature. Whenever that creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Okay. Well, we have Niv-Mizzet Perun in our deck. 5/5 flying dragon, 3 blue, 3 red. It says, whenever you draw a card, Niv-Mizzet Perun deals 1 damage to any target. And then it also says, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. Well, if we put Curiosity on Niv-Mizzet Perun, and Curiosity says, whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card, and this says, whenever you draw a card, it deals 1 damage to any target. Well, that could be a player. So we could just draw a bunch of cards and ping our opponents down, limited only by the number of cards in our library. So Curiosity is a little bit of a combo card. Sphinx Tutelage is it's a little bit of a combo card. It's trying to mill your opponents out, and it does it sort of slowly on its own. It says whenever you draw a card, target opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. If they're both non-land cards that share a color, repeat the process. And then it has the ability to pay 6 and draw a card, then discard a card. So you can kind of start it on its own. But it's milling cards off of your opponent's deck whenever you draw cards. So usually if you're playing a deck that draws a ton of cards, this is a way to start milling out your opponents. We have the classic Jace Wielder of Mysteries. We've seen this card in a few of our decks that we've featured here in this series. It has that text. If you would draw a card where your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. So that means that at least one of our plans might be to draw our deck out. How would we do that? How would we achieve that in this deck? Well, we have the classic combo piece card Intruder Alarm in this deck. It says creatures don't it's a 2 and a blue enchantment. It says creatures don't untap during their controller's untap steps. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, untap all creatures. Everybody's creatures, all of them untap. Well, we have a super slam dunk easy combo with Krenko Mob Boss. It says tap it, create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you control. Well, it's a goblin. So if you tap it to make a goblin, a creature comes into play and it untaps everything, including Krenko, and you can start making more goblins. Great. What are we going to do with all these goblins? Well, Witty Roastmaster says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. That's going to kill everybody if you can make 1,000,000 goblins. Same thing with... I lost it now. We'll find it again here in a second. Perforos. God of the Forge. It says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent. Again, if you're making 1,000,000 creatures, that's it. You're gonna get them right there. Locust God. Whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. So if we're drawing cards, we're making creature tokens. That's going to help us too with this whole plan. Devilish Valet. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, double Devilish Valet's power until end of turn. It has trample and haste. Starts out as a 1/3, but if you make a whole bunch of creatures, now it's really, 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 really big. So, kind of an interesting one. Omen Hawker, tap, add a colorless and a blue, spend this mana only to activate abilities. Well, if we are making a bunch of creatures somehow, Volo, it costs 2 mana to draw a card for each creature type noted in the journal. So if we have out Omen Hawker with Volo, and let's say Locust God, where whenever we draw a card, we make a 1/1 with flying and haste, you know, Volo untaps, Stormtamer, or sorry, Omenhawker untaps, and we're just going to town. So we've got all these little combos in here, and I think there's probably even more than what I have seen and talked about so far. But this is one of those decks that's got kind of all of these angles of attack, and it's playing a whole bunch of just kind of weird, off the beaten path creatures that you just hardly ever see. Uh, oh, I didn't mention Thassa's Oracle. Now we're not really tutoring Thassa's Oracle. This card is kind of the most common win condition in competitive Commander. It says when it enters the battlefield, you look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. That's the number of blue pips in your cards. And you put up to one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. If X, which is your devotion, is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. So this is a little bit like the Jace Wielder of Mysteries. But a lot of decks that play this card tutor for it, and they play spells that get rid of their library. But this deck is doing it in a grindier fashion. So this is, to me, in this type of a deck, this is more of a backup plan. So in the grand scheme, we got a couple mana artifacts. We got a few spells that kind of buy us a little time. We've got a little bit of deck manipulation, and then we got a bunch of random nonsensical creatures doing nonsensical things. And some of these cards sort of synergize and combo together. And the way this deck is built, it's almost like, well, if we run into the combo, yippee, we got there. We're just relying on Volo to write everything down. We're relying on him to document everything. We're relying on him to be the Jacques Cousteau of the D&D world for ourselves, I guess. To me, I look at a deck like this, and this is, I mean, in a lot of ways, this is what I really enjoy about Magic. Personally, could I do without the little combo pieces? Yes, but they're so awkward in this deck, and you're not tutoring for them. It's more like they are an out in case we get a long game. I'm a big fan of some of these random cards in this deck. I really love Chasm Skulker. Check out the artist on Chasm Skulker, and if you can find the squid token that the Chasm Skulker makes, check out the artist on that one too. You won't be disappointed. We've got random coin flipping guys. We've got things that, think they're so cool that they only need this one name, like they're Madonna or Beyonce or something. Brawler. Love it. How do you not love it? That's fantastic. I'm not saying that Brawler is just the Beyonce of Magic, but I bet if you ask him, he probably thinks he is. To me, this is kind of weird. This is a deck that's playing a handful of competitive-ish things like Thassa's Oracle and like these combo pieces and stuff. But it's playing a bunch of random creatures. So it's sort of like it's doing it to have a backup so that it's got an avenue to win the game. Because otherwise, what we're doing is a lot of nonsense. And we're just kind of slapping things down and drawing some extra cards and having a great time. So, I kind of feel like if you sat down at the table with a deck like this, you'd probably end up having a fantastic game, and I think everybody would just everybody would hopefully get a little giggle out of some of the nonsensical things that this, like Fibble Fip, some of the nonsensical things that this deck does. So, once again, a big thank you to the community for contributing to this series by offering up decks of theirs for review and giving us a chance to talk about them and hopefully have some fun while we're doing it and maybe stimulate people's brains in their own pursuit of cool deck creation. You get a chance to see some cards that you might not see otherwise, and I think that's really cool. So again, thank you for that. Thank you to everybody for watching. I love you all. Hope you had a wonderful day, and I hope the rest of your day is wonderful. And we'll see you here again next time. Peace.